Issue 279. Sonic's worried about being in danger and thinks that with the Egg Army here, things will be easier for everyone else. Without realizing that Antoine has to fight some badniks without help, and I bet Big has to fight monsters, but I bet they'll all die in one hit anyways. So that's barely story content. At least it's kinda interesting to see Antoine fight badniks because he never did that outside the reboot, but other than that, there's nothing new here to impress me. I'm impressed that Antoine did beat all the badniks by himself before the OCs could go help him. So that was better pacing than I expected. Big grabs the dark monsters and screams, and suddenly they disappear. I guess he squeezed them to death, but that quickly? He only squeezed one inconsequential part of them. It's not like he was squeezing their heads. And it's still night. But at least that was an interesting way for them to be defeated. But he could have and would have just punched them both. Why didn't he? Sonar hears some ruckus, meaning that Sonic's in trouble, and Chip has a plan to lure some of the monsters into the ruins so the Egg Army can be distracted fighting them. Hopefully he'll be useful. Then the sub-boss Vulture flies into Sonic and lectures him that the heroes fighting Eggman constantly only serves to make him react more viciously. Wait, why did Sonic just call him a lady? I'm not calling it that. How many times has this happened with the reboot? Don't have a character look horrible and then do this. It looks unself-aware of the writing because Sonic has no reason whatsoever to know it's a lady, other than, I guess, the voice. But it didn't look like it'd have a female voice. How about not confuse and annoy your audience when you could easily not do that? It's just inconsiderate to the audience. They couldn't even do the bare minimum and make creatures like him and Lady Cassia pink. Even Penders knew to make that happen with Julie Sue. Sonic says that he could still beat Eggman, as he's lectured that Eggman can't be stopped, and people could die in the fallout of Sonic's feud. So he thinks it's hopeless. Well, the annoying thing is that I know he's right because the heroes can't beat Eggman. The comic can't get rid of its status quo where Eggman rules most of the world, as that's its whole premise. And people probably did die in the fallout of Sonic's feud. How many Egg Army members were killed? But this is distractingly depressing. By the way, the name for this character is so bad that it looks unpronounceable. At that point, just call him Vulture. This is a clear case of them trying too hard. Antoine finds the Gaia Guardian, who's a human, and he says the curry his kidnappers have been feeding him is awful. He should be grateful he's getting any food. The Ray the Flying Squirrel ripoff says it's not that bad, and the mole puts his hand on the floor and says that he senses movement down the hall. Might as well call him Toph. That's not an original character. He's even blind like Toph. And Toph looks way better, obviously. Antoine gets threatened by a monster that immediately gets killed in a tornado, and Chip's happy the plan worked. I like that he hasn't mentioned food in a while, or otherwise tried and failed to be funny. At this point, I'd rather have him be another boring nice guy and not annoy me. Sonic punches the bad guy, stretching his arm to do so. It's always interesting to see him use his werehog form like this, because since when does Sonic get to do what Bunny's famous for? This is one of the weaker good panels for this though, because the bird could have easily been so close to him that he wouldn't have needed to be a werehog. Chip says they've got the Guardian, and everyone's on the move, and Sonic takes off, climbing up the wall, laughing off the bad guy who says that he's dooming them all, and satisfyingly calling Sonic arrogant and stubborn. Well, to be fair, maybe his army in particular is destined to die because of all this fighting. Maybe all of the current Egg Army members are, and that's what he means. Maybe he sees the heroes as selfish, indirect mass murderers because of it. Now this depressing shit making the whole cause look not worth it is probably why Sadie M stuck to Robians, who couldn't say discouraging stuff like this in a kid's comic that just make the heroes look like selfish idiots. You just make the bad guy look right in the end when you never have a plan to actually get Eggman overthrown in the comic itself, and the fighting never stops. Sonic gets given the Gaia keys later on, with the Guardian being realistically scared enough by his kidnapping that it'll be a while before he goes back to the temple. If all of the Guardians that got bothered by Eggman by now were smart, hopefully they'd learn the same lesson he did and stay away from the one place they'll be most likely to be kidnapped from. Fortunately, Sonic says that these guys did all the hard work. I don't see why Antoine thinks that the amount of Gaia Guardians left to find is secret, sensitive information and complain when Big simply tells her the answer. I like that Big keeps things simple instead of screwing up. It's not like he's the kind of buffoon always trying to do things he'd suck at. Then out of nowhere, Sonar asks if everything's okay back at the base, and it turns out she's talking to the bird guy Sonic fought earlier. So they're fake freedom fighters for no reason at all because drama. I never cared about these guys anyways. Thank you for giving me a really good reason to hate these guys beyond their bad designs. Thank you for giving me permission to hate them and see them as a waste of space. Because them actually being freedom fighters was just pretending they were admirable when they looked bad. And there was somewhat foreshadowing to this because Big and Antoine were left to fight robots and stuff alone. Of course, this just brings up the question of why the bad OCs didn't sneak up behind the heroes and stab them in the backs. They were with them the whole time. And for the most part, all they really did was act like freedom fighters. They just helped them. That's not very competent of so-called evil double agents, is it? Like, logically, they would just sneak up behind the heroes and stab them all in the backs when each of them are behind them, but that can't happen because it'd be too dark. So, the writer wrote himself into a corner having this kind of idea. Would anything actually change if they never had this plot twist around them? Is this even worthwhile? They apparently gave the bird the heads up about Sonic and led the heroes into ambushes. And inexplicably, they now have no doubt in their minds about their plan because Sonic showed up and everything fell to pieces. Huh? How? He wants to fix the shattered planet and make all those monsters stop appearing. And so what if Eggman loses the Dark Eye energy? He had tons of ways of getting energy anyways. He didn't need it. And the Death Egg never needing to be refueled is the only thing he plans to use the energy for, and it doesn't even matter. It's not going to make a difference anyways. So now these characters are officially worthless because, surprise, they don't think like actual people do. So they're impossible to relate to. Brainwashing chips. That's all Flynn would need to write. So they somehow are convinced that Sonic is a bad guy. And then they all get blown up and we never have to read their dialogue again. No, that'd be nice to the audience. Instead, the bird guy gets called onto the Death Egg for a mission. Granted, Sonic was a smug jerk to them and never did anything to prove he was a good guy, but did they not take Sonic seriously as a super competent hero before? Really? He has super speed. And then the next story wastes our time with Bunny fighting unlikable, awful-looking people to get an emerald. Let me guess, Bunny wins. Why talk about the story when there's nothing to say? What's to analyze? The plot's so basic, the only thing I'd have to do is read frustrating dialogue there's nothing new to say things about. I can't get invested in this melodrama when the characters look horrendous and I'm actually expected to pity one of them. And then Sally and Bunny reunite and run off stating the obvious that some people just work for Eggman out of desperation. I got that. Really? How long have they been freedom fighting that took this long for them to find this out? It figures Bunny won, but I don't find it particularly epic that she earned it in a bunch of pages with no appeal at all. If I wanted to read about fanfiction OCs, I'd go to fanfiction.net. And I bet even most Sonic fan OCs look better than this guy because they wouldn't have horrible looking eyes. And then an entire page is wasted when we didn't have to see the heroes' reaction to the emeralds on the Sky Patrol. It was nice of Antoine to worry about Bunny being slightly hurt. I bet she'll be fine the next appearance though. After Antoine says happily that they have all 7 emeralds, we see Tails still there. Oh, let me guess. This thing's gonna undo the heroes' victories. Taking away the emeralds is an excuse to drag out the story arc even more, when this could have easily not happened. They spent like the entire comic gathering these things. I have a question. Why didn't Sonic do exactly what he did in the game, where the second he got the Sun and Moon keys for one temple, he went into it and put the emeralds in the pedestal. Then he could bring it to the Sky Patrol. What makes the heroes think they should be doing that? The heroes shouldn't need all the emeralds. What are they thinking not putting even one continent back in the right place? There's a reason I assumed that after Sonic got access to the inner chamber of the first temple, he put the emerald in it right away, and so on and so forth. He'd have to get a real intelligence downgrade to not do that in the comic too. Also, the heroes could have booby traps in the inner chamber if they have to keep the emerald in it, just in case the bad guys come in. It would have been smarter of them to not keep all the emeralds in one place. The first place Eggman would look. Maybe they would have all been safer buried on Angel Island, where no army is. Sally's an idiot. The Sky Patrol is an obvious target for Eggman all the time because it's up in the air where anyone could see it if they looked up, possibly from hearing it. They could have kept all the emeralds with Rouge and absolutely no one would suspect them of being with her. These kinds of mistakes the heroes make has it seem like the heroes do no thinking at all. Why is the page being wasted on a hideous-looking character talking to Eggman? I don't want to see this. Nobody does. We get it already. Predictable melodrama with the ugly cyborg. Basically, she'll keep receiving her treatment if they keep serving Eggman. She? Maybe she should have been pink and had actual eyelashes. It's easier to tell if a human is a girl or not. But you have to actually try to make an animal person look like a girl. Where's the long hair? Where's the dress or skirt? Not even any lipstick? Good, both of them hate Eggman. She does want to leave him. Still, this whole scene could have been just one panel. The first story was by Ian Flynn and had Chip's plan to distract the army with monsters work so that Sonic could save the Gaia Guardian and get his temple keys. It's mostly just the heroes beating bad guys in one hit, which isn't tense. Then we get an unnecessary reveal that the Shamar supposed freedom fighters were actually Egg Army spies to try to lure the heroes into ambushes. But that makes me wonder why they went out of their way to help Chip free the Gaia Guardian and get him back to his house. Now, at least this means I have permission to hate them and want them out of the comic, because not only are their designs glaringly bad, but their personalities are shit too. Now they're just another character going, "Oh no, Sonic's evil! Eggman's a saint!" Which is twice as bad as SDC Online making the civilians hate Sonic. At least SDC justified them thinking Sonic was evil. They thought he tried to take over the world. So, Sonic earned his Gaia keys, and there was a lot of variety in the characters involved in a mission. So I guess that wasn't too bad. It's always interesting to see a mission. The second story, by Ella Baker, is worthless. Go figure, Bunny gets the emerald from Eggman's cronies. She barely even had to do anything. I thought there'd be a long, dragged-out fight, not a wasted page. And Eggman's forcing the cyborg to work for him to keep receiving medical treatment, which, go figure. I already assumed he was forcing every Egg Army member to work for him, regardless, or else they'll blow up. And I can't stand this story because the characters look horrendous, with their colors trying too hard to be special, and their species being too indistinct. I guess Bunny easily earned getting the emerald because of her special powers and fighting skill. But I would have much rather seen her fight bad guys that looked like robots. The plot's predictable, boring, and depressing by the end. I already got it the first time. I didn't need 3 entire pages treating me like a goldfish and fully expecting me to care about a horrible-looking DeviantArt character. When a comic's always done so poorly, it's not self-aware to expect me to actually care instead of getting jaded. Speaking of horrible-looking characters, it turns out that the next Sonic Universe arc is entirely focused on them. It's the Eggman's Dozen I heard about. So, fanfiction where the bad OCs take over the whole story. That is not professional. Isn't that the exact same thing people bitched about Penders for? Too much focus on his characters? How is this okay? At least his characters weren't all unlikable bad guys. I've made it very clear numerous times that I hate these characters. They look amateurishly bad, and their only personality is they're bad guys who work for Eggman. At least if they were all robots, they'd make sense, and I could forgive their designs a bit more because it's justified in universe. How am I supposed to find them such sympathetic characters that I'd root for them? Why would I want 4 issues of this shit? How unself-aware was the writer to think I'd have such bad taste, as to be perfectly fine with character designs looking like this? I'm guessing they won't all die in that arc, or even get satisfyingly beaten up with tons of slapstick. And instead win against their obstacles, who you'll root for the entire time. Otherwise, I guess the Death Egg would have to end up destroyed or something. So, because that's of course not allowed to happen, I don't want to bother reading it if its ending will suck. I won't even get to stare at good art. So I have no motivation whatsoever to read that arc other than making a review of it. With character designs like this, I won't even get to stare at good art as a reward for the bad writing. And I've read enough of Flynn's stories at this point to know for a fact that it'll have bad writing. I know it's gonna be bad, so why should I care? They're all gonna survive, despite what the audience wants, so the whole arc's gonna be a pointless waste of time. Do I need to read that arc? Am I going to be confused if I skip it? Because I'd be fine with making it the last thing that I'd ever review. I think what I'm gonna do is motivate myself to read by playing a level of a game I like every time I've gotten past 4 panels, to give myself something to look forward to. It worked for the last couple issues.